I'm telling you, Tony Petitti's battle, Big Ten commissioner with Michigan and USC, is heating up, and it's now leading to legitimate quotes and legitimate reporting about, is this headed toward Michigan and USC going independent? So that's pretty crazy. And it is all over, of course, this private capital deal. I have to be very careful how I say that, because when I start into even saying private capital, your inclination is to say private equity, right? Like that's what you want to say. That's where you want to get, and you have to stop yourself. No, it is private capital. All right. But this is a quote. I'll get to this quote again in a moment. But this is a quote from an article in The Athletic quoting a Michigan source. Quote, it's headed toward blowing things up. That's in regard to the Big Ten, folks. The Big Ten, the conference that's been around for 120 plus years. Not that that means anything anymore, as we saw with the Pac-12. Oh, who blew up the Pac-12? Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was the Big Ten. Anyway, there's been a lot of reporting going on. Ross Dellinger did a story. The Athletic did a story. There was, like, Matt Hayes did a piece really slamming all of this. John Wilner had a very good in-depth article about the potential private capital deal. What it is, it's the California, like, university pension system, basically, giving $2.4 billion of money up front to the Big Ten in exchange for a 10% stake in Big Ten Enterprises, which would be a different entity created to manage all sorts of brand deals, sponsorships, partnerships to make money for all the schools in the Big Ten. Okay. Lots of people have reported on this. Lots of people have opined on this for sure about it's the worst thing in the world. It's the best thing in the world. It is very typical of our society today. There has been two really strong sides, not a whole lot in between in the middle on this. And even what I saw from some of the reporting here was like the Athletic reporting was going through Michigan and USC, which are the parties that we now know are not on board with this, as the Big Ten tries to push it through anyway. And then, like, clearly the Big Ten got to Ross Dellinger and had him release his story, which was like, no, here's the reality of it. And I will read you all those points. Okay. But it was the Big Ten trying to tell its side of the story. All right. Because I think a lot of people would say, oh, you see a lot. Private equity is the worst thing in the world. It's going to ruin college sports if you bring it in there. Big Ten's quick to point out, and this is legit, it's not private equity. Okay. It's UC Investments. It's a pension and retirement fund. They're purchasing a 10% stake in the new Big Ten subsidiary, Big Ten Enterprises. That would get them then 10% of future media rights, sponsorship, and event revenue. The Big Ten would like you to know through Ross Dellinger that they would not have very much influence on the Big Ten or Big Ten Enterprises. I believe they said no influence on the Big Ten, little on Big Ten Enterprises. They get like one seat at the table. They can't sell their 10% stake for at least 15 years. That was from Ross Dellinger's article. So there was concern there, like, oh, well, could they just turn around and flip it and sell it to a private equity person? Couldn't sell it for at least 15 years, and the Big Ten would have a say in who they sell it to. This does extend the grant of rights for an extra 10 years for all the schools in the Big Ten that would sign on to this. That's a big part of this. That's why your lower level schools want this deal. And the Big Ten would also like you to know that the Big Ten presidents told Tony Petitti to seek this out a year and a half ago, even though John Wilner asked some very good questions about just what kind of financial incentive there is for Tony Petitti and everybody who works in the Big Ten with this, because it seems like there would be some real financial incentive for them to pull it off. So why do the schools like it, John? Well, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan will be on a tier above everybody else. They would make more money than everybody else in uneven revenue distribution, $190 million from this. Oregon and USC would get 145, everyone else 100 to 110. And then, like, your unequal distribution moving forward, 5.5% to the top three, 5% to USC, Oregon, 4.9% to everybody else. There's also brand and success initiatives. It's kind of the new standard. It would disproportionately favor schools like Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. Now, I think people at Michigan would tell Ohio State, doesn't even come close to really touching what our value is compared to the rest of the conference. The little guys, why would they sign on to the uneven revenue distribution? Because it extends the grant of rights for 10 years. So it gives them more stability. Through 2046, that really handicaps any of the big boys trying to leave. And so if you are Minnesota or Maryland or Indiana, Purdue, one of these schools, you've got guaranteed stability for another 10 years. That's why you like it. Ohio State apparently does still have some issues with Big Ten enterprises, but they like the capital infusion, which seems weird to me. I mean, I get everybody wants money, but like, you're Ohio freaking State. Like, you really need this right now. Michigan and USC, though, are pushing back hard. Okay. Here is a little bit on that. All right. So John Wilner, first of all, brings up the question of, all right, what would be in this for Tony Petitti? Okay. Tony Petitti has taken a lot of bullets. I will say maybe some of it has been unfair when the Big Ten presidents did ask him to seek out ways to make extra revenue, but that doesn't mean he's above questioning, like, all right, how much money is he going to make off of this, right? John Wilner says Petitti would also benefit, although the degree is unknown. At minimum, the grant of rights extension would give him job security. It eliminates a major threat to Petitti's job security. If a Super League formed and Ohio State and Michigan left, well, then you don't have a job anymore. Ask George Kliavkoff how that goes. John Wilner also said, we don't know whether Petitti's contract includes performance bonuses tied to conference revenue growth, but it's a safe bet. Look, I have no particular knowledge of that situation. I don't. But what I do know is that John Wilner knows his stuff. And so if John Wilner is saying it, then I would imagine it probably is likely that that is there. Wilner says USC and Michigan execs are smart enough to see the trap. Their counterparts at Ohio State are focused on the present at the expense of the future. Buckeyes are the biggest brand in college athletics, a TV ratings machine that generates more than $250 million in annual revenue. They already have massive competitive and financial advantages. What do they gain by hitching the football program to Rutgers and Minnesota for 20 years? And I think this is the biggest point John Wilner makes, where I'm just like, I have no idea why an Ohio State would want to do this. It says he says that's 3 lifetimes in college sports. And with changes brought by AI, it could become 10 lifetimes. So trading away flexibility and 10% of the Big Ten's revenue would be an epic whiff, according to John Wilner. Okay. One financial expert told Wilner the revenue tiers that the Big Ten is talking about don't begin to reflect Ohio State's real value. So there's some good perspective, but I haven't even gotten to the crazy part of this yet. Okay. I have not gotten to the crazy part of this yet, which is the reporting that came from The Athletic. And then there's a little bit here, Trojan Wire and the Trojan Blade from the USC side that started to dip their toes into all this. They said it would be years down the road, in all likelihood, if this were to happen, because of the Big Ten grant of rights, obviously. But they started to float, like, what about USC being an independent? Trojan Wire, man, I tell you what, they seem a little fed up with the Big Ten. Upset that Big Ten opponents thought that they were kind of soft, being treated like second-class citizens, not in the first tier, not in the Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State tier of unequal revenue distribution. And so the question being asked, like, hey, is this sowing the seeds of, like, will USC have to go independent? They say Notre Dame does a good job of embracing its villain role as the country's most famous independent team. USC is also at its best when the rest of the country considers the Trojans a villain. If no one wants to play nice with USC, why hold on to any alliances? Interesting stuff. But the real kicker here comes from the Michigan aspect of this. Okay. From the Michigan part, The Athletic points out, one, there's already been some dissension among the ranks with folks at Michigan who are still upset about the Big Ten suspending Jim Harbaugh to put a bit of a damper on the national championship, post-national championship high, if you want to call it that. The reporting, though, goes on to say this situation with Petitti and the private capital has some at Michigan questioning the future of the school's 129-year relationship with the Big Ten. Quote, we are the golden goose, us at Ohio State. Why would you cook the golden goose? Said a Michigan source briefed on the deal. This isn't an aggressive move by Michigan to break anything up. If anything, it's an aggressive move on Tony's part to break up the Big Ten. It's headed towards blowing things up. So this does not seem like just a minor deal. This seems like a pretty big rift that has formed between particularly Michigan and the Big Ten. USC obviously involved there, and there was the story and the reporting that they had kind of gotten together, both sides of it, and they were they put their heads together more or less when they played in football earlier this year and decided to oppose all of this. Here's another quote. Quote, I don't think anyone at Michigan is saying we want to leave the Big Ten. That's why it's so puzzling to hear that others want to go ahead without us, essentially pushing us out, because that's been the Big Ten stance now. According to Dellinger's reporting, they're looking at a next Friday vote on this and kind of saying, hey, get on or we're moving forward without you. And then there would be a grace period where USC and Michigan could still hop on for the next couple of months if they wanted to. More or less just trying to railroad it through, right? Trying to force it through, even if they're not going to actually agree to it. So I found that to be very interesting. Michigan's kind of like, this seems like a tactic to just force us on whether we like it or not. We're Michigan. We deserve respect. And then this is commentary from Stuart Mandel of The Athletic, who was just writing the article. He says the mere idea of Michigan and the Big Ten disagreeing enough about the future to part ways at some point is monumental. Michigan to the SEC, Michigan as an independent, like Notre Dame, speculate away. I mean, Michigan to the SEC, I can't. That seems pretty outrageous. Michigan as an independent, though, USC as an independent, that seems to make a little bit more sense. Now, grant of rights, all that, right? Would that mean that this would be waiting until 2036? What? I mean, how many things could happen between now and a million, a billion? I get it. But in a world where, Florida State was like ready and lawyered up to sue its way out of the ACC at one point in time, you just never know in conference realignment what can happen. And I certainly, if I'm Tony Petitti, the last people I would be wanting to make upset would be anybody at Ohio State or Michigan. And you've got Michigan folks saying this is heading towards blowing up. Saying that to The Athletic, I mean, that's not great. That's not a great position to be in. So, look, I know everybody's running with this, doing crazy things. I think it was actually Gambling Gauchos this past week that we're talking about. Who was it that said? I guess that was some smack to Notre Dame, where it was like that Utah was going to take Notre Dame's spot in the Big Ten. Anyway, there's been a lot of happenings on Twitter that have gotten people really fired up in their feelings on both sides of this. Obviously, it doesn't seem like anything's imminent here, but I'm shocked that this has turned into such a bit like people are drawing such hard lines in the sand on both sides of this. I figured it would either get through or it would either dissolve, and it would be everybody would be pulling in the same direction basically wherever it happened. And now it seems like we've got a legit rift here. And with what we have witnessed over the ACC over the last few years, I would just say keep your eye on it and see what happens. I mean, I know this is a show coming from the perspective of the Big 12. Obviously, there would be ramifications and ripple effects if something were to happen here. For now, it's just like as a college football observer, you're kind of pulling up your popcorn here. Like, well, okay, let's see you get out of this one, Tony Petitti. Let's see how this is all going to work out.